Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, novelisations and books by famous people. It's my weekly wrap up for week 3 of Garb August. So we are continuing the joyous celebration of trashy books, which is Garb August. Week 3, as I said in the intro, was around novelisations and books by famous people. So I've read a few of those this week, as well as being able to tick a couple of things off the Garb Bingo card. And I also read a non-trashy book as well, albeit there were elements of trash to it. So I'll talk about that too. So I've got 7 books that I've finished this week to talk about. So it's been a pretty productive week, albeit a couple of those books were really short. One of them was basically a short story. And a couple of the other ones were fairly short. But yeah, let me dive in to them and talk to you about them. And then once I've done that, I'll do the normal kind of wrap up of what's been on the channel and what's coming on the channel in the week ahead. So yeah, 7 books read this week. It's felt like a decent reading week. Quite pleased with it. So yeah, let me go through what those were. So I'll do the physical books first, and let's start with the trashy ones. So I've just finished this morning Love Over Gold by Susannah James. So this is one of the books I read for the novelisation weekly prompt. So there's weekly prompts each week. This week the weekly prompts were novelisations or books by famous people. So this is a book based on a series of TV commercials which were aired in the UK. I'm not sure if they were aired in the US as well. I did see something in a review for this book that suggested to me that they might be. So about a kind of 30-something couple of yuppies in 90s London who kind of bond over their mutual love of Nescafe Gold Blend. So it was a very popular series of adverts in the UK at the time, so much so that they commissioned Susannah James, and that is a pseudonym, I forget the author's real name. Anyway, they commissioned somebody to write a novel based on that love affair. And it's, you know, it wasn't great by any means, but it was probably as good as you could expect it to be. What it does quite well is mix in the scenes from the adverts. So there were like 7 or 8 adverts, I think. So it mixes in those scenes from the adverts reasonably well into the story, and it's always fun when you get to those bits. I watched, you can watch like a compilation of the ads on YouTube, so I watched that before reading the book, so I could remember them. So that was quite fun, but there's a lot of padding as well. You know, it's nearly 350 pages long, this book, and basically it's a slow burn romance, but it felt like it could have shaved off, you know, probably almost 100 pages and not really suffered. And indeed have been a better book if it had done that. So a bit longer than it needed to be. I would have preferred it to be the length of a kind of standard, you know, Mills and Boon or Harlequin category romance. I think that would have worked better. But it was reasonably diverting. I also read book 8 in the EastEnders prequel series. So EastEnders being a very popular UK soap. They published, not long after EastEnders started, they published a series of books that were the kind of origin stories of the various characters in the show. Or not all the characters, but significant characters. This one is about Mary, who was a punk character in the show, as well as being, I think, like a single mother. So she was a character. One of my patrons commented that she was the character that they threw at whatever the kind of moral panic of the day was. They gave Mary a storyline about it, which is probably fair. So this is about her kind of teenage years and how she ended up being the person that she is in EastEnders. And it was reasonably good. It was well enough written. It was quite bleak, albeit it never got deeply into the kind of unpleasant side of what was going on in her life, because it was, you know, a TV tie-in, so it had to be reasonably tame. But basically the story is she's a teenager. She's got quite like restrictive, controlling parents. She rebels a bit. She gets into punk music through her love of a band called Gyro Ripoff, which I thought was a brilliant name, and ends up becoming like a groupie for the band. So it kind of follows that story of, you know, kind of mild drug use, lots of sex, albeit not explicitly described, and teenage pregnancy. So yeah, it was reasonably entertaining. I did quite enjoy that. Also read, so for books by famous people, I read this one, The Satsuma Complex by Bob Mortimer. So this was also a, I'm part of like an on-off booktube book club. So we haven't read anything for a while, but we decided to try again. And this is what we're reading this month. So this is like so Bob Mortimer, if you don't know him, is a British kind of comedian and TV personality. He's on lots of kind of comedy shows and things like that. Most famous for his partnership with the comedian Vic Reeves, which was huge in like the 90s in particular. So this is his first novel. It's a kind of a mystery novel, but basically a comedy. Very funny. He's got a nice way with words, and it definitely felt like Bob Mortimer when you were reading it. So about this guy who meets this kind of mysterious woman in a pub. A friend of his goes missing, and it's just about him trying to tie all the pieces together and figure out what's going on. So as a mystery, it wasn't great. It was okay, but it wasn't great. But as a book that kept me smiling and laughing, it was definitely entertaining. So I did enjoy it. Other things for Garb August then. So things I've read on my Kindle. So Flowers in the Attic by VC Andrews, which obviously ticks off the VC Andrews square on the Garbingo card. I think I just started that when I filmed this video last week, perhaps. So that was a reread for me. It's a really interesting book. It's not always a good book, but it is always an entertaining book. And I think its place in kind of cultural history is really interesting. So I did enjoy rereading it. Yeah, I had a really good time with it. You probably know the story already. So, you know, some children get locked in an attic while their mother tries to gain her inheritance from her horrible parents. So there's lots of kind of child cruelty, trigger warnings and things like that. And it ends up, and this doesn't happen till much further through the book than I remembered it. So it's only in like the final third of the book. So it is a bit of a spoiler, but it's such a well-known spoiler, I don't think it counts as a spoiler anymore. So the teenage brother and sister who are locked in the attic end up having an incestuous relationship. So, like I say, an interesting book, not necessarily a good book, but definitely an interesting and arguably an important book culturally. So also read on my Kindle a couple of short stories by an author called Leonard Delaney. So these were to tick off, or the first one of these was to tick off the book based on a video game square on the Garbingo card. So the story was called Taken by the Tetris Blocks. It's an erotic, like a comedy short story about this. So basically aliens have invaded Earth and they look like Tetris blocks, and they've kind of woven themselves into normal society by taking up roles in that society that require things that are block shaped, so like doors, and now these intelligent Tetris blocks. And it's about this young woman who ends up having a sexual relationship with a number of these Tetris blocks. So it was as daft as it sounds, but actually quite funny, quite amusing. I did enjoy it. What I enjoyed even more was the second story that was bundled with that, which was called Pounded by Pluto, which is about a scientist clearly based on Neil deGrasse Tyson. Leonard Delaney gives him a name, which I meant to make a note of and forgot, but it's something like Tyson deGrasse Neil or something, Nielsen or something like that. So obviously Neil deGrasse Tyson, who goes to Pluto on a rocket ship that he borrows from Richard Branson, and discovers that Pluto is actually like a living being, and he thereafter has a sexual relationship with Pluto. It's so crazy, but so funny. And it reminded me a bit in some ways of kind of 50s sci-fi in terms of some of the concepts and things like that. So and indeed of the novel Solaris by Stanislav Lem, which is about a planet that kind of has a consciousness, from what I remember. It's a while since I've read it. So it's kind of a bit like that, but basically Neil deGrasse Tyson and Pluto have this relationship in order to discover like the final element which will unite the periodic table, that element being love. So it was just fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that story. I've completely spoiled it, but it's definitely worth reading, and it's on Kindle Unlimited. Also read, and I enjoyed this one far less on Kindle Unlimited, a book called Killer Kids by an author called Jonny Cassidy. So this was to tick off the Killer Kids square on the Garden Bingo card. So this is a true crime book that looks at 10 cases of children who've killed their parents. I think it's slightly missold because I read it as being children, i.e. people under the age of 18 who've killed their parents. And it's definitely kind of marketed like that. But some of the cases are about adults who've killed their parents. And it was well, it was incredibly badly written. The prose was just awful, distractingly bad. And also, and maybe this is the nature of the form, by taking 10 cases and writing a fairly short book about all 10 of them with, a chapter per case, he completely, he doesn't get into any of their like in-depth analysis or anything like that of the cases. So it's literally just the facts that he's obviously just, well, I say obviously, I assume he's done some online research, maybe watched some, old clips of like TV news reports on them and things like that, and constructed these like little case files for each of the 10 cases. So there's no depth to it at all. I mean, some of the cases felt like they were quite interesting, and it kind of made me think I'd probably be interested in reading a book, a longer book about this particular case written by a decent writer. But Jonny Cassidy sadly is not a decent writer, in my opinion, and Killer Kids was not really worth reading, other than the fact it ticked off that square on the bingo card for me. So I think that's all the stuff I've read for Garb August. The other thing I read then this week, and this was a buddy read with Chloe, one of my patrons, was Mary by Nat Cassidy, which was really good. I really, really like this a lot. I'm going to do a full review of it probably this week. But it's a story of a woman who's going through the menopause, who returns to her hometown and discovers a load of weird stuff about her past and about the town, basically. So it's a horror story. It's effective as a horror story. It's also as effective as a book about a middle-aged woman going through the menopause. I felt, and obviously I don't have first-hand experience of that, but I thought it was a really enjoyable, well-written, gripping, amusing, entertaining horror book. I thought it was really, really good. So I will do a review of it and give you more information. So in terms of currently reading then, so I'm currently reading When She Was Bad by Kate O'Mara, the British actress. I thought I'd read this before, but now I'm not sure I have. Because it turns out when I went to log this on Goodreads, Kate O'Mara wrote another book around the same time called Good Time Girl. And now I'm wondering whether it was Good Time Girl that I read rather than When She Was Bad. Or maybe I read both of them. I don't know. It was like 25 years ago. But this so far is really good. I've read the first chapter. I mean, it's definitely trashy, but it's good. So it's about this middle-aged actress, obviously based on Kate O'Mara. What's she called? She's called Leonard O'Brien, who is a very successful Hollywood actress and producer, who's having a relationship with a much younger man, which Kate O'Mara was I believe known for doing. But she's got a daughter that she had when she was much, much younger, who was given up for adoption. And the daughter's now found out that Leonard is her mother and wants to make contact with her. So it is super, super cheesy and trashy, but I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm also going to start, so when I finish this, or I may even read them both at the same time, I've got the novelisation of Gremlins by George Guype, which Nathan, one of my subscribers, very kindly sent me a Kindle copy of. So this is a book that I read when it came out. So back in the in the mid-80s, my family didn't have a video player, and I was really getting into movies, and particularly kind of horror movies. But I was only about 11, I think, when Gremlins came out, and it was a 15 in the UK. So you had to be 15 in order to go and see it at the cinema. So there was no way for me to see it. But I read the book. I've read it a few times, I think, and I remember really, really enjoying it. So I'm really looking forward to doing a reread of that. And then other things I've got on the pad for this week are... so this week, the final week, and it's kind of a week and a half, actually. Sorry, as usual, I'm unprepared. So the final week and a half of Garb August is... Anything Goes, so you can read anything you want for the rest of the month. So I've got a couple of things to tick off Garb Bingo card squares. So I've got Guilty Pleasures by Laurel Hamilton, the first of the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series, which ticks off the Sexy Vampires square. And I've got the which one I'm going to read? The Visitation by Sean Hudson, which is a UFO novel, to tick off the conspiracy theory square. And then I've also got a book that I can't now find my physical copy of, but I've got a huge book which is like 1,000 pages. I'm not going to say what it is. See if you can guess what it is in the comments. It's 1,000 pages. I have got a Kindle copy of it as well, so even if I can't find the physical copy of it, I'll be able to read it. I first read it when it came out in the 80s, and remember thinking it was trashy even back then as a kid. And it's written by somebody who was a famous author who went on to become more famous for doing something else which is deeply trashy. So see if you can guess in the comments what it is, but if I've got time I'm going to try and squeeze that one in as well. So that's all the books talked about. Another good reading week for me. I'm well on my way to ticking off all the squares on the Gar Bingo card, and when I do my final wrap up for Garb August, I will do a little picture-in-picture thing where I tick things off, I think. So yeah, looking forward to the week ahead and the stuff I'm going to be reading then. Hope you are too. In terms of channel stuff then, so in the last week, so I would say again, I think I said this last week, but I'm really finding that my decision to move to 5 videos a week rather than 7 was the right thing to do. I found it much easier to kind of keep on top of things, and have been feeling much less kind of stressed out by the channel as a result. So definitely the right thing to have done. So videos in the last week. So I did a video about Goodreads and my kind of thoughts about Goodreads. I did a digital book haul. I did the currently reading tag, which is about kind of my reading habits. And I did a video about 10 Killer Animals books that I've really enjoyed. In the week ahead, I think I'm going to do a video talking about authors and stories and the concept of, you know, is it right for somebody who doesn't have lived experience of a thing to write about it? So I've got some thoughts about that, having read Mary by Nat Cassidy. I'm going to do a review of Mary by Nat Cassidy, as I said. I'm going to continue my digital book haul, so I've got more books to show you in that. And I think I'm going to do a more personal video on, I think it will be on Thursday, talking about something I have talked about on the channel before, but in a bit more depth, and talking about a book that really helped me with something in my life. So look out for that one on Thursday probably. Anyway, I will leave it there. Hope you're all continuing to enjoy Garb August. Hope you've had good reading weeks. Let me know what you've been reading in the comments. And as I said, see if you can guess what that 1,000-page book that I'm considering reading before the end of August is. But anyway, I will leave it there and say, as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.